Welcome everybody, I'm glad to be here. I'm Kristen St. John. I'm Head of Conservation Services at Stanford University Libraries. I'm happy to see people I recognize and a lot of new familiar faces and new faces as well. So we began this project with a webinar, and then our first in-person meeting was at Stanford, my home institution, in early June. We met in this building where we were at the time. We've actually since moved. And this is a lot of us who participated. So we had conservators, conservation scientists, the similar mix to what we have going on today. And we all gathered to talk about terminology, which is critical that we know what we're referring to in our documentation so then we can link it to other people. There were 23 participants from 13 institutions and 9 presentations over the course of 2 days. Most of the talks are available on the website, the LCD website, so you can watch the presentations or you can look at the presentations if you don't have time to watch the whole thing for your reference. And in preparation for the workshop, we wanted to think about terminology and what is it that people are actually using that we can then refer to when we're linking. So what are the thesauri, glossary, vocabulary lists that are in play? So we sent out a questionnaire, and through that questionnaire we got a lot of responses about what people are using. And then we compiled them into a website, and this is still available if you want to have a look at what people told us they were using. So we did that questionnaire in advance to identify those vocabularies, and then we asked the people who signed up to pick actually, I think we assigned them vocabularies to investigate and to see how ready they were for use in linked data. So were they in a machine readable format? What was the quality of the thesauri? After our talks on Friday, we discussed those in groups with comments about those vocabularies and thoughts for next steps. And then I'm going to hand it over to Athanasios to talk about what we did otherwise and what will happen.
I mean, one of the discussion, or an important part of the discussion during the workshop was figuring out a way to align the vocabularies. So the objective is to have a record being described with one vocabulary in one system, another record being described with another vocabulary in another system. These records refer to similar things. Somebody who is searching wants to pick up both of these things, but they're described using different words. So the idea is that if we match the word from one vocabulary with a corresponding word of another vocabulary, then through some clever software, we're able to search remote systems using our own terminology. I'm searching with the words that I understand, but I get results described with words that other people have used. So the alignment of thesauri is quite a critical task when it comes to sharing records. And there are various steps. I mean, this is a product of many hours of discussion with Marsha Zhang from Kent State University and John Graybill, who I will refer to in a minute. And it might look quite clear now. It wasn't clear when we started talking about it. So there are, we think, some distinct tasks here. One is the encoding task, so that we translate a word list or a thesaurus into a machine readable format. And there is, we produced this chart now. This machine readable format is called SCOS. It's a standard to encode thesauri. And we produced this chart. It's going to take too long to go through this now. The second webinar will revisit these charts and we can discuss them again. But we think these are reasonable instructions for somebody who maintains a vocabulary to transform that vocabulary into scores by using simple questions and having nice notes to explain things. So the first task is to turn a Word document into something that is more easily readable by machine. The second task is to actually do the matching. So make sure that you find the corresponding terms for each term in your vocabulary. There's a separate chart for that. We started with all being in one chart and quickly realized it wasn't working. And those of you who attended the workshop in Stanford will remember the agonizing hours in front of the whiteboard trying to figure out what it is that we're talking about. But I think this is what it is. Basically, this is again a step-by-step process. By answering some not very complex questions, you can receive guidance on the strategy to follow to match your terms. We have isolated two important players there. One is the BPT, and the other one is the AAT. This is not done on purpose yet. BPT means the backbone thesaurus, which is a very general thesaurus with hardly any, well, not at all conservation related, but it's so broad that you can hang anything underneath it. And of course the AAT, who most of you will know, the Art and Architectural Thesaurus from the Getty, which seems to be the most extensive thesaurus currently around conservation, which obviously has a lot of work to be done to it. But if people are to align with some vocabularies, I think these two are the ones that stand out. So again, we will have a chance to discuss this in more detail later. And the final step is, once you've done this matching and you've got your own data set with all the matched terms with other vocabularies, it's useful to share it so that people can search, people can actually use that resource for searching. And this is where John Graybiel was very helpful. He has been leading a project called the Bioportal, and they've done exactly the same thing, only for biomedical thesauri and ontologies. So he had a lot of experience with how things should be done. This system, of course, you get to balance cost, you have to balance resources with availability and so on. I would say that the third step is perhaps the one that's least developed at the moment. This is the idea. So these are local thesauri, things that I hold in my own computer. I can turn them into scores, encode them, and put them somewhere that other people can have access. We thought we can use cloud services that are free and that can be co-managed, so we can have lots of people. So if somebody drops out, somebody else can pick up, as it were, and that doesn't cost anything. That's free. So we share the data here, and then we get some money to build a system that will drag data from here and present them in a nice website, allow searching, allow APIs, and so on. So that's the plan. But again, these are to be discussed. There are lots of tools for doing all these things. This is just a list of some of them. We haven't made any decisions. I don't know that we will make decisions. I mean, if people prefer using one tool or the other, then that's absolutely fine. And the next steps, and we'll talk about that tomorrow as well at the last session, we would like to put together a small project where we identify thesauri that there's willingness and people want to start working on them, encode them and align them after receiving some funding. But we can talk about that again tomorrow. There's a very important meeting next week in Washington where the priorities for the AHSC regarding aggregated data and collections will be set. So we will try to blow the trumpet as hard as we can for conservation.